everyone, and welcome to an edition of My Scotts Valley Weekly. I am Robert Aldana, your host. And in case you haven't seen our website at Facebook, it's facebook.com/My Scotts Valley. We have the privilege of having the mayor of Scotts Valley, Mr. Randy Johnson. How you doing, Mr. Mayor?
Doing well, thank you.
Great. Now, you know, I envisioned you as being a little bit taller. I don't know. I used to see you when you were pitching for the Seattle Mariners.
Yeah. I'm not a lefty, and I'm not quite as wealthy as a guy, but I get a lot of compliments about the name.
I was going to say that, you know, I don't know if you've seen that commercial, but there's a commercial right now that there's a gentleman named Michael Jordan, and he shows up to various different venues. And when he shows up to the reservations that he's done, everybody thinks he's the Michael Jordan. So when he shows up there, he said, "Oh, you're that Michael Jordan." So I would imagine when the pitcher shows up, everybody says, "Oh, because they think you're the one who's showing up," right?
Yeah.
There you go.
It's a little confusing, but I straighten them out.
There you go. So let's talk about where our city is today. We're going to talk a little bit about Measure U and what's going on and the importance of Measure U. But first of all, give us a little insight as to what's happening, where we're at with finances with the city of Scotts Valley.
Well, our finances are pretty much intact. However, we do run a structural deficit, primarily because a couple of years ago we decided that we didn't want to continue the sales tax. In other words, it had a sunset after 5 years. We had made a promise that we would not continue it and let it sunset, and we did that. So we're the only city without a sales tax.
Okay.
The other issue is, even though we're very frugal with our dollars,
right,
and we run a very tight ship, we also have the issue of our property tax. Out of every $100 that citizens pay, our city only gets 7 of those dollars. And so when you have other cities, for example, that get, for example, I think Santa Cruz probably gets 21 to 23% of its
right,
out of every 100. It makes it a little bit difficult to kind of raise the funds that you need to run a city. You know, nobody likes comparisons in some ways, but at the same time, we as a city have an operating budget of about 8.2 million, where Capitola has one closer to 13 million. So it gives you an idea of similar cities in terms of population. We're twice as big, but at the same time, they run about 13 million, we only run about 8 million. So I just want to use that as a comparison to show that we try and be pretty frugal with the dollar.
Okay, and so we have a situation right now where in our city, and there's a lot of employees being furloughed right now, right? And there's some monies that are needed for various different parts of the city of Scotts Valley. Can you elaborate a little bit on that more?
Sure. Since over the past 10 years, we have reduced the workload and number of employees by around 21 to 23%.
Okay.
And how do we do that? Well, what we do is we combine, for example, we combine people, positions, and so forth. For example, our city manager is also director of finance, so we combine those two positions. We have a director of public works who is just retired. We're going to combine that person with the director of wastewater. So we're doing our level best to kind of make sure that we have fewer employees, but try and still provide the core services that Scotts Valley likes. On the other hand, we also have employees who are furloughed.
Right.
So once a month, the last Friday of every month, the employees don't work.
Okay.
And that saves a certain percentage that way as well. So we're doing everything we can to tighten the ship. But as you know, we don't want to go to a level where it gets so low that it affects the people's quality of life.
Okay, all right. Now, what does Measure U mean? How will Measure U make a difference?
Measure U will make a difference in that we will be able to charge an additional 1.5%. So on every $10 that people spend on taxable items, not food, but taxable items, it'll be another nickel in terms of their bill.
Okay.
And surprisingly, the nice thing is that money not only comes from people who live here, but it also comes from people who shop here who don't live here. For example, we get a tremendous amount of people who, in fact, shop here from San Lorenzo Valley.
Right.
They come right through here. They'll stop at our Safeway, our drugstores, our clothing stores, and what have you. And so that's why we think that sales tax is both the most fair and really helps us garner some of those outside dollars that normally we wouldn't get. It'll raise about $1.2 million. And it goes to keeping the core services intact.
Right.
And that is important because, you know, our police are probably the lowest paid in the county. We they're about 45%. They can earn 45% more over the hill
Okay.
than they do here.
Right.
So people have been accustomed to, you know, really fast response time by our police, whether it's at schools or in their homes, or if they see a burglar or any sort of emergency, our police are right there within about 3 minutes.
Okay.
That's unheard of
Okay.
in a county like ours.
Excellent. And so when you talk about the Measure U, it's an 8-year plan,
It is.
right? Are we talking about raising $1 million a year, or are we talking raising $1 million through the course of those 8 years?
$1 million, $1.2 million per year.
Okay, $1.2 million per
Right.
year. That's what Measure U will do.
Right, and
Okay.
and another part of the equation that comes in here, of course, is that the state of California routinely takes a lot of money from our citizens or our
Okay.
cities, both to kind of fund schools. They took away the redevelopment recently, the redevelopment agency, which allowed, for example, helped us build our beautiful library.
Yeah.
But a lot of the dollars that we normally paid people to do redevelopment type of services now has come out of the general fund, and that's close to $500,000 in and of itself,
Okay.
Robert. So it's an important takeaway that we're really not happy about, but at the same time, the state pretty much controls what people do if you're a small city.
Okay, as we talked about a little bit ago, and we have a Facebook page called My Scotts Valley, and there's people who had a couple of questions. One of them was Phyllis, who wanted to know, what are we going to do to be fiscally sound once, from this point forward? It's really easy to look back and be the Monday morning quarterback. It's really easy to do that. And you always have to recognize, I think, when things don't go according to plan, but you also have to plan for the future too. You have to start taking stances. Okay, this didn't work for whatever reason. What do we have going on in the future that will show stability fiscally for our town?
Well, I think in general, just from the comparison that I used
Right.
with a city like Capitola versus us, we do things fiscally responsibly in the city.
Okay.
It's hard to foresee what happens with when the state kind of is erratic and they decide to do things like they've done, namely take things away. I mean, nobody had a crystal ball. It was completely out of left field when they decided to get rid of the redevelopment agency.
Right.
So that was an important factor. We decided to gain the trust of our citizens to let the sales tax of 5 years ago,
Right.
or actually more like 7 or 8 years ago now, go away. So right now we are the only city without a sales tax. And so, as you can probably understand, not having a sales tax, being a low property tax city, we can cut and be as frugal as we possibly can be. But like any household, you still need a certain amount of income in order to kind of maintain the services that we provide. As you can see, whether it's Sky Park, whether it's our police, whether the help we give to schools, whether it's the roads that we do, the recreational facilities, all the things that go into what makes Scotts Valley a kind of a special place are intact, and we just want to keep it that way because people have become accustomed to a certain quality of life, a standard. And that standard is important for us to maintain, and we don't want to see that slip any further. This is not to add services,
Right?
Because as I told you, we're combining. We are through attrition and so forth, limiting the number of employees that we have. So we're doing our level best to make sure that we're frugal, and I think we've done a pretty good job.
Okay, excellent. I want you to know that I'm a proponent of Measure U, so I'm voting for
thank
Measure
you.
U. And I've actually studied it and read a lot about it. I'm sure I don't know as much about it as you do, but I believe that this is definitely a measure that people need to vote on. Okay, but that's my opinion. Everybody has their own opinions, and you got to respect that. Tell us, when is election day?
It is on November 5th.
Okay.
Of this year. People, a large chunk of people, as you probably well know, do vote by mail. And the nice thing is that when you get that envelope, and most people have, there's only one item to have to vote on, and there's an arrow there, and we're hopeful that you'll, cross
Yes.
the arrow that says yes, and send that in. And many of the polls will be open. Certain people will be able to go to polls. There's a certain portion of our population that doesn't have a polling place,
Right.
and all those people have been mail-in ballots.
Okay.
So I would say 40 to 45% of the people mail their mail-in ballots automatically now, and now the rest go to the polls.
Okay, excellent. Now we have a question from Diana and on our My Scotts Valley Facebook page, and she wants to know how she can get involved, or how people can get involved in like the town center, the redevelopment of town center. How can citizens get involved with things like that? I know there's been a lot of talk about the rebuilding of it and just the remodeling of it, and I think there's a lot of people say, you know what, I'd love to put my input. I'd love to know what's going on. How can people actually get involved with something like that?
Very good question, and I'm happy to report that we are probably now closer than we've ever been to the town center becoming a reality. It's an expensive piece of dirt. It's an expensive proposition. In the past, we've had many developers come forward, but when they see the costs of doing business, not so much here in Scotts Valley, but just building, making leases and so forth, it's difficult. We now have somebody who is very interested. Offers have been made on the land, so
Right.
those are actually happening. And in terms of getting involved, probably the developer PDC is very interested in getting input from the public.
Right.
So there's going to be an outreach program within the next 2 months, probably maybe even 3 months past the first of the year, but starting late this year and going on in the early part of next year to get input from the community to see what they feel, what they would like to see, what types of shops. It's kind of a two-step process. The plans there are, I think, going to be very attractive to people because
Right.
we're really demanding that that whatever ends up here in Scotts Valley is in fact a place where people want to be, a kind of a village green atmosphere, a main street where people feel comfortable in gathering and so forth. But the other part is what kind of stores and what kind of shops and what kind of retail is going to go in there. And that's something that really comes in the second step
Right.
of the process, because until you actually have the plan and take it out for people to kind of, or retailers to actually see and see if they want to become involved in the leases, it's kind of hard to just kind of guess. If you're a developer, you need to have something tangible for them to see, and that's going to happen within the next, I would say, 3 months. So we're excited about it.
I think people are basically saying, and this is what I think, is they want to have some input as to what goes on in our town. And my personal opinion is that it'd be great to have like a healthy mix of, there's going to be some chain or franchise type of stores, but it'd be great to have a healthy mix of those and also some homegrown businesses too. So,
Right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your time. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and hopefully on occasion we can get you on chatting with us and just letting the good people of Scotts Valley know what's going on and give us reports on what's happening. If you don't mind, I know you're a busy guy, but I do appreciate your time.
Well, thanks for the invitation. I had a great time chatting about the future of our city, and I'm hopeful that people on November 5th will vote for Measure U.
Absolutely.
And become involved in everything that we do here, including the town center. I think it's a great partnership that we have with our public.
Beautiful. Are you on Facebook?
Yeah, but I'm not very
Facebook inclined?
well. I'd like to be, but I think I need a few tips from my kids. Okay,
Okay.
They're light years ahead of
Okay,
me.
well, when your kids do teach you how to use Facebook, you got to like the My Scotts Valley page on Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay, dokie.
I've heard a lot about it.
Okay, beautiful. Thanks again,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor. Hey, thank you folks for watching. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Aunt Lolly. A lot of people are excited to hear what she's got to say. She's actually like a Scotts Valley staple here. A lot of people have seen her driving to the neighborhoods in her ice cream truck. So we're going to talk about what she's doing, what she's all about, and also a lot more. So we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back after this.